Hello. Hello, chat. How are we doing? It's been a while. Hmm. So it's only been a while because I've been busy, right? And I'm still trying to figure out stuff. So the only reason why I'm shooting now is because recently I I heard there's new regulations and I always want to get competitive in Pokemon, but I have no idea, no experience. So today I'm gonna be watching a video, an hour-long video, into the introduction to competitive Pokemon. And give me one moment here. It's very hard to see. The new regulations, Regulation H. So in summary, I think I heard that they banned all the Paradox, pretty much all the legendaries, including Mythical. And this got me excited because the the teams now are going to be more or slightly more diverse. And just the thought of that got me excited. So I want to try to get this serious or be serious with this. I've been watching on and off or very rarely on the VGC. And for videos, I only watch Wolfie. So then that comes to the video we're watching. So even before I decide what Pokemon I want and start playing and catching, I need to understand the fundamentals. I have a notebook. Just gonna write stuff down because you're not learning if you're not engaging. All right, so join me. Join me in this lesson. Oh. All right. Listen up, chat.
Okay, we're getting started. First of all, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for enrolling in VGC 101.
Okay, also, I'm a slow learner, so I'll be pausing a lot. So bear with me.
Pokemon Academy. The purpose of this class is to educate all of you, wishful, hopeful Pokemon trainers, and
That's
make
me?
you into powerful Pokemon competitors.
Awesome. That's me. That's me.
The class format is lecture-based. There will be questions at the end. Please hold your questions until the end.
What?
Questions are for subscribers only because, like,
Subscribers only?
realistically. You do not need to buy a textbook
I am a subscriber.
for this class. That is not required. I do not believe in paying $300 for a textbook, which will go out of date in 1 to 2 years.
Awesome, my man.
It's the biggest scam. That's well, not the biggest scam, but it's another way that colleges take advantage of impoverished students. Anyway, as I said,
That's
the purpose
me.
of this class is to educate you all on the fundamentals of Pokemon, and then
Mhm.
and then to go on even further past the fundamentals to teach you some advanced concepts. There will be homework. Homework is not required, but it is recommended.
Okay, so for homework, he said it's recommended. If I have the time, I try stream the homework. And if not, hopefully I remember to tell you what happened during the homework next stream or the next lesson.
Again, this is a class where you're going to get out of it what you put into it. This is not a class where I am interested in testing everybody here on all of the ins and outs and intricacies of Pokemon. This is a class where, you know, your parents paid a lot of money to send you here. So if you don't want to waste their money, then it's in your best interest to pay attention and do your best. So
yes, Professor.
There will be homework. It is optional. There may be tests and quizzes. I am not sure. Anyway, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk about Pokemon. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Pokemon is a franchise that's very well known. It's the largest media franchise, I believe, in the world. But for some reason, or for numerous reasons, competitive Pokemon is not very well known. Despite
Hold on. I just realized the stream is really, really bright. Wait, how do I make it less bright? Oh no. Is it that? Is that better? It's really dark.
Pokemon being one of
I mean, I guess. I guess it's better to see. Alright.
the most recognizable and popular franchises, competitive Pokemon is a surprise to people. If I went up to a stranger on the street and I talked about competitive Pokemon, there's a very good chance they would think that I was talking about Pokemon Go, which does actually have a competitive format. However, that's not what we're talking about. So, what is competitive Pokemon? The way that I always like to explain it is it's a combination of chess and poker. It's a turn-based competitive video game that's a simultaneous move game that it combines. It's a traditional strategy game in a sense, but also deals with uncertainty. There's a lot of probability management in addition to information management, which are skills that are not always common in other games in general.
Okay.
For those of you who follow Super Smash Brothers, one key difference
I
between
do.
Super Smash Brothers and a game like Pokemon, although I will say there are many, is the fact that in Super Smash Brothers, the character that you pick is always the same. So a character like Fox McCloud always has the same back air, always has the same neutral air, etc. Always has the same neutral B. In Pokemon, however, Executor can be used in a multitude of ways. And so figuring out how your opponent is using their Pokemon and what kind of Pokemon they are and how they are trained is essential. That's what we mean when we say information management.
Okay.
When we talk about probability management, that has to do with the fact that there are a lot of percentage chances in Pokemon that are under 1% or 100%. For example, not every move has 100% accuracy.
Yeah.
Many moves have secondary effects that only trigger like some of the time. For example, Rock Slide, one of the most famous VGC moves, has a chance to flinch, which is not 100%. So that's why I like to describe it as chess combined with poker, because while there are very clear examples of macro game plans, while there are very clear examples of board position and where, overall goals and where you need to go. There's also the very real thing that there's not always 100% safe win conditions. So how do you balance building a strategy when there's uncertainty? Additionally, Pokemon is extremely complex. We're going to talk more about this later. However, there is effectively an infinite combination of Pokemon moves, stats, and abilities. When you consider all of the various possibilities, it's not literally infinite, but it's too much. Like it would take me. I actually don't know how to calculate it. It's close to infinite. It's effectively infinite for in human non-computer terms. Let's move on. So what is VGC? Because if you are interested in competitive Pokemon, there's a very good chance that you have heard of or are interested in VGC.
Yes.
VGC is the official competitive format for Pokemon. When I say official format, I mean Pokemon themselves, the company, runs tournaments. TPCI, the Pokemon Company International. VGC stands for Video Game Championships. So most of you are, if you have played Pokemon before, the VGC might seem slightly unfamiliar. The reason is that, first of all, unlike in the game where you bring 6 Pokemon and you have your 6 against your opponent's 6, in VGC you only use 4 Pokemon each game. That's a big change from traditional playthroughs where you just use 6. Okay. The other main difference is that in VGC the battles are double battles. This introduces an entirely different dimension to Pokemon because there's a lot of strategies that are exclusive to double battles. And if not exclusive, that they work very differently in double battles. So it's a very, very different style of playing the game. In terms of the tournament structure, tournaments are best of 3, and they are Swiss. What Swiss means, and I'm not talking about the cheese, haha. Swiss means that you play, let's say, 9 rounds. It's determined by the number of players at the beginning of the tournament, and you normally try to play until that there's one person who is undefeated. So each round you play against somebody who most likely has the same record as you. So if I have 2 wins and 1 loss, I'll play against somebody else who has 2 wins, 1 loss. And 1 loss. You do this for however many rounds. So even if you lose 5 games in a row, 6 games in a row, you still continue playing. So you can lose all your games and still play 9 rounds. At the end of Swiss, let's say 9 rounds, 8 rounds, 7 rounds, then the top X, normally top 8, top 16, or top 32, occasionally top 64. This year we might actually have some top 64s. Those players move on to a single elimination best of 3 bracket. So it's Swiss followed by top cut. Some tournaments, instead of going straight to top cut, will have a day 2 Swiss format where the top 64 or 32 or however many people had 2 losses or less normally, those players will move on to play another 5 or 6 rounds of Swiss, and then we'll move on to a top 8. Another important thing to note about VGC is that there are no duplicate Pokemon and there is no duplicate items. This is something that's very different than traditional single battles, where you can have duplicate items, though duplicate Pokemon are not allowed. And additionally, certain Pokemon are banned. So the rules change every single year for VGC. VGC 2020 is different than 2019, is different than 2018, etc.
Okay, so then today is 2024. The newest regulation is September 1st. And the Pokemons are banned, or what is it again? All the Paradox and all the legendaries, including Mythicals.
And, additionally, the Pokemon that are allowed have an enormous impact on the metagame. When I say metagame, I'm talking about the Pokemon within a rule set that are very common. So, for example, on the screen you can see Excadrill and Braviary, and those Pokemon are currently very common in the VGC 2020 meta. However, last year these Pokemon had almost no usage, so a lot of whether a Pokemon is good, good being relative, it depends on the other Pokemon that are allowed. So each year in VGC the rules change, which keep it very dynamic and very interesting. Even when a new game does not come out, the rules will still change. Like I mentioned, it's double battle only, and all Pokemon are set to level 50. So even a Pokemon under level 50 will be set to level 50. That's important because there are certain strategies that rely on a Pokemon being under leveled, so those strategies cannot be used in the video game championships. The video game championships are a
Mm-hmm.
yearly circuit. I'll probably talk more about this in a future video. However, there's a yearly circuit. You earn points by going to events. Once you get 400 points, you qualify for Worlds.
Wow.
And in addition to that, there is also certain players are given extra bonuses. For example, flying around the world. There is somewhat recently, less than a month ago, a tournament hosted in Brazil that I
Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm back. Sorry about that. I had to make sure my cats were okay. They've been quiet. But okay, back to the video.
Could have gone to, they would have paid me to go there. So that's one advantage of playing VGC. You get to travel around the world. I personally have been to Hawaii, Vancouver for free, both of those, Australia for free, London, California a bunch of times. I live on the East Coast, and a bunch of other wonderful places that I would never have gotten to go to. Berlin, that I would never have gotten to go to otherwise. Additionally, you can win money. So I won nationals last year, and the total monetary benefit I got from that, from winning one tournament, from playing one weekend, 14 games of Pokemon or something, maybe a little more. I won about $10,000 from that, all in all, maybe a little more. So that there's a big reason to play VGC. The game is extremely fun. There's this international community. You get to travel around the world, and you can make money. So there's a lot of perks, and those are just a few. I could talk about why people play VGC for a whole.
But that's the dream.
That could be a whole lesson. Yes, of course, VGC is not the biggest, even within Pokemon. Single battling is more common, but I do hope that Pokemon can grow. That's one of the reasons I wanted to start this class. Let's move on. So when you're talking about Pokemon and for singles and doubles, let's talk about the type chart. I also should mention that VGC events are only in person. There actually are some online events, and you can actually get points that will go towards.
So this was 2019, and it was before COVID. So after this, everything was online. But then now in 2024, it's back to normal, in person.
Qualifying for the World Championships, even online. However, most of the events are in person, and you can. In past years, you were not able to qualify with only online events, even if you were to win everything, I believe. So that is something to keep in mind. That's one advantage to play singles. Well, yeah, I mean, you can play VGC online as well, but yeah. So there's 18 total types in Pokemon. For those of you who are not familiar with this, I know this can seem a little intimidating, but it's not as complicated as it looks. The way that you read this chart is you pick one of these types on the left. For example, let's look at fire, and you compare it in kind of this drop down line here. So fire matched with fire, you have a red, not very effective. Fire attacking water, not very effective. But fire attacking grass is super effective. Same with ice. So you can do this for the whole type chart. The easiest way to master this type chart is to do it like one type at a time rather than trying to do the whole thing at once, in my opinion. This type chart is extremely
One type at a time. What do you mean?
important. So each type has its own unique relationships with the other types. Think of this as a giant game of rock, paper, scissors, except instead of 3 options, you actually have 18, which is why it's so much more complex. So type chart is extremely important. This is one of the fundamental building blocks that you need for mastering competitive Pokemon. So
Yep.
each Pokemon can have 1 to 2 types, and each attack has 1 type. Each move has 1 type. So the way that Pokemon works is that when you use a move, it's calculated. The offensive damage is calculated against the defensive types of the user. So if I were to use a fire type attack against an electric and a grass Pokemon, it would do 2 times. A white box means normal, 100% 1 time. So it'd be 2 times 1. So my fire type attack would do twice as much damage. However, if the Pokemon was grass and ice, it would do 4 times as much damage because it's 2 times 2. The game will also tell you now whether a move is super effective, not very effective, or neutral. However, it's better to know the whole type chart, because if a move is 4 times 2 and 2, or 1/4 times effective, it will not tell you that. So it's important to know the type chart. It's also important to know in terms of predicting switches, for example, so that you don't need to have the Pokemon in front of you to know. So like I mentioned, each Pokemon can have 2 types, and those will cancel out with each other. So if we look at Bug and Rock, Bug is weak to fire, but Rock is resistant. So all you have to do is multiply the 2 types together to find 2 times 1/2, which is equal to 1. So fire is neutral against bug and rock type. If a Pokemon uses a move that is the same type as it, as the user, if a fire type uses a fire type attack, that attack will get a multiplier of 1.5 times. 1.5 times.
Oh, same the stab.
So
this here. Same type attack bonus.
that attack bonus is called Stab, S-T-A-B, as I called it for
he
the
explains
first
it.
2 years, playing competitively. But yeah, so there's a big advantage. It's not almost as strong as super effective, but it's a big boost if you use an attack that's the same type as the user. So for that reason, most Pokemon will run types that are at least one attack that is the same type as the user. Because if a move is going to be neutral and not super effective, then you get a bonus for that. So I think that's all I want to say here. Type chart is extremely important. It builds on a lot of the relationships going forward. The last thing I want to touch on the type chart actually is that there are certain types that are immune to other types. So if we look at it, flying is immune to the ground type. If I use a ground type attack on a flying Pokemon, it will do 0 damage. It's not very effective, it's just a 0. It's immune. Let's see. Electric is immune on ground, fighting is immune on ghost, poison is immune on steel, or I should say steel is immune to poison, dark is immune to psychic, and ghost and normal are both immune to each other. So ghost can't hit normal, and normal can't hit ghost, which is interesting. There is actually one move that has 2 types, which is flying press, but that's an exception and you won't see that very often. That move is effectively a fighting and a flying type attack, but I don't think there's any other moves like that. So let's talk about stats. Stats are another very important, very, very important aspect to...
Okay, let me write this down. Let's put down 1, and then types. 2 stats.
The game. So each Pokemon has 6 stats. HP, attack, defense, special attack, special defense, and speed. Fighting cannot hit Ghost unless it has the Scrappy ability. There's 2 things. When I say stats, there's 2 things you actually need to know about. First, there's the base stat. So the way that a base stat works is all Pokemon have the same... All Pokemon of a species have the same base stats. A base stat, for example, we can see Charizard. These are Charizard stats. Charizard has base 78 HP. All Charizard have base 78 HP. The reason why some Charizard have more HP than others have to do with the actual stat value, and that is made up of the EVs and the IVs, which we will talk more about later. I want to talk a little bit about base stats. So a base stat at level 50, with perfect IVs, a Pokemon's base stat, base 78, or Pokemon's actual stat with no EVs and 31 IVs. This won't make sense to everybody, but I want to say it just so everyone's clear. So with max IVs and no EVs, a Pokemon's base stat for all stats except HP is the base stat plus 20. I find that very, very helpful when thinking about Pokemon's base stats. So Charizard with no EVs and 31 speed IVs and no nature would have 120 speed stat. HP is different. I believe it's plus... I always forget. I think it's plus 65.
What?
Charizard with no... Very, very helpful when thinking about Pokemon's base stats. So Charizard with no... or Pokemon's actual stat with no EVs and 31 IVs. This won't make sense to everybody, but I want to say it just so everyone's clear. So with max IVs and no EVs, a Pokemon's base stat for all stats except HP is the base stat plus 20. I find that very, very helpful.
What? Base stat plus 20?
With max IVs and no EVs, a Pokemon's base stat for all stats except HP is the base stat plus 20. I find...
Okay.
I find that very, very helpful when thinking about Pokemon's base.
So I'm gonna write down base plus 20, and then brackets plus 65 HP.
Charizard with no EVs and 31 speed IVs and no nature would have 120 speed stat. HP is different. I believe it's plus... I always forget. I think it's plus 65. but I'm actually forgetting. Maybe 85, I can't remember. Also, I'd like to say thank you to all our European viewers in other areas of the world where it's much later. Yeah, thank you. I know it's late, but I admire your dedication to education. At level 100, it's different, and I don't play at level 100, so I do not know. But you could easily figure that out by looking on Showdown. Like I said, actual stat values vary depending on the level, EVs, IVs, and nature. So we're going to talk more about that later, just keep it in mind. You can manipulate a Pokemon stats relatively significantly. So remember earlier when I talked about how there's a lot of complexity that goes into Pokemon, there's a lot of variation. Stats are a big reason for why that is the case. Yes, let's move on. Actually, do we have any questions on stats? Is there anything that I've missed? Is there anything that doesn't make sense to you all? IVs and EVs, there's going to have to be a whole... We'll talk a little bit about an overview of IVs and EVs later. However,
You said questions to the end.
Yeah, now we're just going to do an overview. We'll have to do a separate lecture for IVs and EVs. How many stats do you get from EVs? At level 50, it's about 65. There is a way for Pokemon to become typeless by using the move Burn Up on a pure fire type. That's exactly what it sounds like. A Pokemon has no type. No weaknesses, no stab. How are stats calculated for Pokemon that evolve after level 50? There's a calculation done within the game that projects what the stat would be with given EVs and IVs in nature, so it just calculates that. So when we're talking about investment, that's a question for another lecture. How HP and defenses talk. We're going to talk a little bit about HP and defenses in a bit, so we'll move on. Speaking of which, here we are, HP. So let's talk about the HP stats. So we're going to break down the stats a little bit before we move on. HP stands for hit points. It's the total pool of health your Pokemon has remaining. Some Pokemon, or in some games, as you lose health, you become weaker. So, like someone with lower health would be weaker than someone with higher health. In Pokemon, that's not the case. In Pokemon, it doesn't matter how much health you have as long as you have above 0. For the most part, there are a couple notable exceptions. So, but for the most part, how much health you have remaining does not affect your Pokemon's other stats. When you take damage, your health is deducted. So whenever you take a hit, you lose health, regardless of anything else. Whenever you take an attack, you will take damage. Some notable exceptions. So like I mentioned, some Pokemon get stronger or weaker depending on how much health they have left. That is very rare, and you shouldn't. If you're a beginner, you shouldn't worry about that. I just did want to mention it. Archaeops is one notable example where when it's at half health, it loses half of its attack power, which is great. And Darmanitan, as you see here, will actually transform into Snowman form, Zen mode form. It will change in at half health. So there's a couple Pokemon. Wishy-Washy is another notable example. And some attacks get weaker with health. Zygarde is another one as well. Zygarde will transform. But for the most part, all that matters with regards to health is how much you have left. In some games you can heal. Pokemon is not one of those games, with the exception of there are certain attacks like Roost and Recover, and the new move Life Dew. Those attacks restore health. And there are certain items as well, the most famous one being Leftovers, as well as Citrus Berries, Iapapa, Figgy, the whole Thewomb berry subclass as well. Those all restore health as well. But other than that, if your Pokemon does not have a move that restores health, or an item that restores health, any health that you lose is lost until the battle is over. I've gotten this question before, so just to specify, at the end of every VGC battle, your health is restored to full. So it's not like you have to. It's not like, Melee Adventure mode where you have 3 hearts to heal or whatever. It's once once the battle's over, you're healed back to full. In terms of actual investment, we're gonna have to do a separate lecture on that when we're talking about how you want to invest in HP versus defenses. As a general rule, when you have higher defenses and lower HP, you want to invest more in HP, and when you have higher HP and lower defenses, you want to invest more in defenses. Speaking of other stats, speaking of attack and defense, let's talk about attack and special attack versus defense and special defense, because this is something that a lot of trainers a lot of new players get tripped up on when they're starting. There's 4 main stats relating to damage dealt, okay? So there's attack, defense, and special attack and special defense. And just to be totally clear, when I say physical, I'm going to refer to attack either as attack or physical attack. Attack is the same as physical attack. Attack can mean the stat. or attack can mean like I used flamethrower, which is an attack, or move. Also, I'd like to say congratulations to Mango for winning the Mango. Very, very nice. Moving on. Attack, aka physical attack, defense, special attack, and special defense. So this next bullet that you can see, the second bullet on your screen that you can see here, I'm going to try and explain with my words. I just wanted to type it out. The way that it works is attack and special attack are identical, and defense and special defense are identical in the way that they function. The reason why there's two is that, let's say there was only attack and defense, then there's a complicated damage formula that I didn't think I needed to include because it wouldn't make any sense to you, because I'm sure it doesn't make any sense to me. So the actual formula is extremely complicated. However, let's say there was only attack and defense. Then let's say I was up against my opponent and I used an attack with my Pokemon against one of my opponent's Pokemon. Then in the damage formula, my Pokemon's attack stat would be calculated, in some way, with the other Pokemon's defense stat to calculate the damage. My attack stat, their defense stat. If you can remember that interaction, my attack stat versus my opponent's defense stat, it's the exact same way, except that there are two attack stats and two defense stats. So my Pokemon's physical attack stat is calculated against my opponent's physical defense stat, just defense stat, where if I use a physical type move. So we're going to talk more about this in a second, actually the next slide, but there are physical and special attacks. And if a move is physical, if Flamethrower, for example, is special, but if I use close combat, that's a physical attack. So therefore, because it's a physical attack, it tells the game, okay, use the attacking Pokemon's close combat, use that Pokemon's attack stat, and calculate it in combination with the defending Pokemon's defense stat. However, if I use a move like Flamethrower, which is a special attack stat, that would be calculated against my opponent's special defense stat. There are a couple exceptions to this, mainly Psyshock and Psystrike, which use the user's special attack versus the defender's physical defense, which is a rarity. But for the most part, that's not how it works. It's the user's attack stat and the defender's defense stat. So this introduces a very interesting dynamic within Pokemon because, let's say my Pokemon is very high physical defense stat. In singles, that would mean that Pokemon could be a physical wall. However, in doubles, you can't just bring your physically bulky Pokemon in on a physical attacker because there's two Pokemon in the field at all times. So, for that reason, you have to play that Pokemon differently. So a Pokemon like Quagsire or Steelix is traditionally a lot better in singles than it is in doubles. Chansey and Blissey as well. Not great Pokemon in doubles, much better in singles. Also not in the game. Goodbye. So it adds a very interesting dynamic to Pokemon because rather than in single battling where you can focus mainly on if let's say you want to use a defensive wall, you max out your HP stat and you max out whatever defensive stat you want to wall for the most part. I'm oversimplifying. You can't necessarily do that in doubles because you have to expect to take both physical and special attacks. I also should mention there's a new move called Fighting Press. This is a fighting type attack with I believe 80 base power. This is a move that uses the user's defense stat instead of their attack stat. It's very cool. I'm sure it will see a lot of use. Let's move on. Physical and special moves. So I know this might be a little small. Bear with me. I want to show you how you can see what move category. Body press. Sorry, not fighting press. There's three categories of moves. So we've already talked a little bit about this, but we're going to talk a little bit more about it. First of all, there are physical moves, which use the user's attack stat and the defender's defense stat. There are special moves, which use the special attack stat of the user and the special defense stat of the user. And there are status moves, which are neither. So, status moves are a little bit weird. A status move is a move that is not physical or special. I would say that they don't do damage, but some of them do indirect damage, basically. For example, a move like Pain Split does do damage, traditionally. Unless they have the same HP stat, but it will do damage to the target. However, Pain Split is a special or a status category move. Moves like Will-O-Wisp and Toxic, which put on status conditions that affect the target and do damage, those moves are also status category moves. However, they do damage. So, status category moves, they traditionally don't do damage, or they're just not direct, basically. Moves like Protect, Rain Dance, Sandstorm, those are all status category moves. If you look on your screen, you can see the 3 different symbols if you want to check what kind of move your Pokemon has. So if we look up at Rotom, we can see that it has, I've hovered over Trick, I've selected Trick. This is just in the summary screen. You can see that Rotom has that symbol under Category, which is like half black, half white. Kind of like Yin and Yang-esque. That means that Trick is a status category move. Dragon Pulse, as you can see on Duraludon, is a special move. You can see that kind of with the circles. It looks like someone's thrown a stone into the water. That means that Dragon Pulse is a special move. And lastly, for Mr. Fish, for Fish's Rend, you can see there's kind of this explosion symbol under the category. Okay, I don't know, can you guys see my mouse? I'm just like there, and there. That tells you that that move is physical. You can also look online. That's normally what I do if I need to check, just because it's easier than checking in the game. But yeah. Any questions about stats? Well, let's finish speed, and then we'll have questions about stats. Speed is very unique. I'm going to be completely honest. Speed is a very unique mechanic and one of the most interesting mechanics in Pokemon, in my opinion. Speed is unique. So, with HP, attack, defense, special defense, speed, there's this kind of marginal benefit to having slightly more of a stat. If you have slightly more HP, you can survive a move that would KO you. You might be able to survive otherwise. Slightly more defense or special defense, you take slightly less damage from attacks. Slightly more attack and special attack, you do a little bit more damage. Speed is not like that. Speed, if you are 1 point faster than your opponent, or if you are 100 points faster, it doesn't matter. It's the same. So ideally, you would always want your Pokemon to be 1 point faster than your opponent's Pokemon, because that would be the most efficient use of your stat points. So,
interesting.
Why is speed important? As you might have guessed, or as you might know, the speed stat determines the order in which Pokemon move. Pokemon move from fastest to slowest, taking apart priority, which we'll talk about in a second. So, the faster Pokemon will move before the slower Pokemon. Why does that matter? Why do we care if a Pokemon is faster? Why do we care the order in which Pokemon attack? The reason for that is that, let's say we are having a battle, and I have Dragapult and you have Snorlax, and your Snorlax is low HP. If my Dragapult KOs your Snorlax before you can attack, then I've gotten an attack off, whereas you were not able to attack this turn, because a Pokemon that is knocked out cannot battle anymore, so it can no longer perform moves and advance you towards your victory. So that's why speed is important, among other things. If you were knocked out, or there's other bad things that can happen to you besides being knocked out. There's status, which we'll talk about in a second, like burn or sleep or paralysis or freeze, which are very annoying. And if you can attack before your opponent, you can attack before they induce those status conditions on you. Speed is extremely important. It's a crucial mechanic in Pokemon. And for that reason, throughout all of Pokemon's history, there have been a number of moves that you would not use in the main story mode, right? Like Tailwind, Trick Room, Thunder Wave, Icy Wind. All of those moves are very, very, very present in competitive Pokemon, especially in VGC, as well as items such as the Choice Scarf and abilities like Swift Swim, Sand Rush, and Unburden. All of those things are extremely present because speed is such a crucial mechanic, and a large part of competitive Pokemon is a battle of speed. Priority moves, these abilities, these items, they all play into this this fundamental question of how do you become faster than your opponent. There is one thing I want to mention, actually. Speed changed. Surprise! Most of you probably already know this, but this was a big change in Generation 8, and it was different than in previous games.
Okay, this I did not know, or wasn't aware of.
So, it changed. The way that it used to work was that when you started a turn, and if you were a singles battler, you might not know this because it didn't matter in singles. It did not matter at all in singles. In doubles, however, it was extremely, extremely important. So, let's say I have Ludicolo on the field and my opponent has Dragapult. If there's no rain on the field, then my Swift Swim Ludicolo will not be moving before the Dragapult. However, if rain is in the field, then my Ludicolo will be moving before Dragapult. So, what does that mean? What am I talking about here? Why does that matter? You would assume that if I switched in the rain, Ludicolo would now be faster and would move before Dragapult. However, the way that it used to work, and that it worked for all of my my history, playing Pokemon up until this year. So, in previous years, the speed order, and the order in which the Pokemon moved, would happen at the very beginning of the turn. So, there's no rain on the field, therefore, my Ludicolo would move after the Dragapult. Even if I switched in Politoed, even if I switched in Pelipper and set the rain, it wouldn't matter. It would not matter. The turn order was set at the beginning of the turn, and it's not just, I'm not just talking about weather. If I used Thunder Wave, if I used Icy Wind, those changes would not, they wouldn't help. They wouldn't help at all. And the turn order was set at the beginning of the turn, so even though my Pokemon like were now faster at the end of the turn because the turn order was set at the beginning of the turn, didn't matter. My Pokemon would be moving second regardless. The change here, the change that happened was now the turn order updates mid-turn, and that's huge for competitive Pokemon. So if I switch in Ludicolo now, my Ludicolo will move before the or if I switch in the rain Pokemon now, like Pelipper, now my Ludicolo will move before my opponent's Dragapult, which means that, as we mentioned earlier,
never mind, I know this.
Them out, I have a chance to be disruptive. I could burn them with Scald. Lots of advantages to this update. For this reason, certain moves like Tailwind, like fast Thunder Wave Pokemon, like fast Icy Wind Pokemon, and abilities like Swift Swim and Sand Rush are now much better. And they were already good. Don't get me wrong. They were already very good. However, now they're much better. So that's a very big change. It's something you need to be aware of when dealing with Pokemon. We'll talk about priority. Okay, we'll talk about priority. Then we'll pause for quick questions from the general chat. Someone asked, "Are you going to talk about Prankster?" Thank you for asking, person131. I am going to talk about Prankster. So we were talking a lot about speed and how faster Pokemon move first, right? That does not apply all the time. Faster Pokemon, there is a way for a slower Pokemon to move faster, or before a faster Pokemon, and that way is
priority moves.
Priority. So we talked about moves earlier. We talked about how every move has a type, right?
What was the section before?
Now they're much better with Pokemon for the general chat. Someone asked, "Are you going to talk about Prankster?" Thank you for asking, person131. I am going to talk about Prankster.
So I'm writing down number 3. Speed plus priority.
So we were talking a lot about speed and how faster Pokemon move first, right? That does not apply all the time. Faster Pokemon, there is a way for a slower Pokemon to move faster, or before a faster Pokemon, and that way is priority. So we talked about moves earlier. We talked about how every move has a type, right? Every move has a type, and every move has a...
Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Just helping my girlfriend with something.
Category. So Flamethrower is a special move that has a fire type. There's also something else you need to know about each category of move. So each move has a power. Trick Room is -6. Well, you can't win them all. Trick Room is -6. Speed checks only apply within priority brackets. So every single move has a priority. And most moves, like we mentioned earlier, Flamethrower, Close Combat, Surf, Scald, Hurricane, those moves all have neutral priority, aka they are +0 priority. However, some moves have boosted priority. Quick Attack is +1, Protect is +4, Extreme Pleated Speed is +2, I believe Fake Out is +3. And what that means is that when we were talking about speed checks, using the speed stat, only applies within a Pokemon's priority bracket. So, What that means is that if that Dragapult uses a move that's +0, but it's way faster than my Sylveon, but my Sylveon has Quick Attack, which is +1, even though my Sylveon is slower than Dragapult, Quick Attack is a +1 priority move. Therefore, Sylveon will attack before Dragapult. Some moves also have negative priority. As the chat mentioned, Trick Room is -6, not -7. And Roar is like -6 or -5, I think. I'm not totally positive on that, but it's low priority. So priority makes a big deal. Most priority moves are balanced in some way. Most of them are relatively weak. Like the ones that come to mind for me are like Mach Punch, Fake Out, Aqua Jet. Those are all 40 base power. Bullet Punch is 40 base power. Vacuum Wave is 40 base power. So yeah. The other thing to note is that some moves, or there's some abilities change priority. Specifically, Prankster. If you use a status category move, like we were just talking about, Prankster gives that Pokemon +1 priority. So these are all things you need to think about with speed. Oh, it is -7. Let's go, Wolf. Sucker Punch is +1. That's a good example. Sucker Punch is a +1. Extreme Speed is +2. Now, do we have any questions about stats? Just really quickly, do we have any stats questions? We've talked about all the stats. We talked about speed. We're going to move on to status conditions next. And just so everyone's aware, this is slide 11 out of effectively 20. Fake Out's +2? I thought it was... Wait, I thought it was plus... I think it's +3, but I'm not positive. Does Activate Trick Room swap prio brackets? It does not swap priority brackets. That's a great question. No, priority is still the same. So Mach Punch is still +1. It doesn't go to -1. Is there an easy way to learn what moves have priority? There is a link on Cerebi that Juicy J just linked, which has priority. So that's a good way to do it. Fake it's +3, that's what I thought. Yeah, guys, are you finding this? Is this helpful for you all? By the way, I know we have a lot of people here. Are you guys finding this helpful? Is this good for y'all? Is this format good for y'all? I'm still figuring it out myself.
I'm watching a video. It's not a live stream.
If two Pokemon have the exact same speed stat and use a move of the same priority, it's a 50-50 coin flip. Remember when we were talking about probability management? Well, I hope you're good at flipping coins. So. It's a 50% chance to move first if the Pokemon is the same priority. Or is the same priority, same speed stat. I abbreviate speed to SPE, and special defense to SPDEF. Good refresher. Kind of basic info. This is the beginning, right? It's going to get more complicated as things go on, but we have to start with the basics. And I'm sure, actually, if you guys watch the end, I'm sure you'll learn something new. I'm sure most of you will learn something you did not know before. Like how many of you learned that Trick Room is -7 priority. Extreme Speed is actually only +2. The move with the highest priority is Helping Hand. Prankster sets a priority to +1. I don't think there's any status category moves that... Wait, does it add +1? I'm actually not sure about Prankster, because I don't know how Prankster Protect works, but it doesn't really matter, because moves like Protect and Helping Hand are going to be fast. Like, it doesn't matter in what order within Prankster they move.
It's music from the video?
Does it add?
Oh, it is.
I think it does add. I think it adds, yeah. Okay. Let's talk about status, because status is very important to talking about Pokemon. So, status. Let's talk about status. There's 5, (6), bracket 7. There's 7 status conditions. We're only talking about 5/6 of them. Burn, Sleep, Paralysis, Poison, and Freeze. We're just going to go over really quickly what each of them do. There's a couple ways you can be inflicted with status. The first is you can have it... there's some moves that just straight up inflict them, for some of them, for everything except Freeze. The other way is that some moves will have a secondary chance to inflict a status condition. So, let's talk about Burn. Burn is one of the better status... Well, they're all good for different reasons. Burn is a very good status condition. So, Burn means all of your physical attacks, their attack power gets cut in half. And at the end of every turn, you take 1/16 damage. I actually believe that is halved if you have Thick Fat. That's how it used to work, but I don't know anymore for sure. But you take a little bit of chip damage at the end of every single turn. And you have each of your physical attacks are cut in half power. So if you get afflicted with a Burn and you are a physical attacker, that's very bad. Burn is one of my favorite statuses for that reason, because it basically weakens Pokemon significantly. I forgot to talk about stat changes. Oh well, next lesson we'll do an addition. Poison. So regular poison is very easy to understand. It does 1/8 damage per turn. 1/8 damage per turn. However, there's a second type of poison which is afflicted only through Toxic, I believe, which is Badly Poisoned. So the way that Badly Poisoned works is the first turn you take 1/16 damage, then you take 2/16 damage, then you take 3/16 damage, then you take 4, etc., etc., etc. Poison Fang. Oh, and Toxic Orb. That's right. So if this timer can be resetted if you switch. So if I'm taking 4/16 damage and 2 layers of Toxic Spikes. Thank you. If I'm taking if you're taking 4 ticks, 4/16 damage, and you switch out, you will still be badly poisoned when you switch back in. However, your timer is back to 1/16. So
Okay.
that's something that's very important to know. The next thing we want to talk about is you can only be afflicted with one status condition at a time. So you cannot be burned and poisoned. You cannot be burned and frozen, etc., etc. You can be confused while having any of these other conditions, which is why confusion is kind of a weird status. Same with attract, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, paralysis. For those of you who haven't played for a while, paralysis has changed. It is, instead of being a 1/4 reduction in speed, it is now only 1/2. However, the thing that makes paralysis broken, which if you've watched my videos, you have a 1 in 4 chance of not being able to move every single turn while you are paralyzed. And paralysis never goes away unless you're holding a berry, which cures it, or you use the move Heal Bell or Aromatherapy. No, burn halves the damage of the Pokemon who is burned. So paralysis' speed multiplier is much better now that speed changes take effect immediately. However, the real thing that makes paralysis the most dangerous is the 1/4 chance to be unable to move.
1/4, really?
Sleep. So sleep is it makes you unable to attack for between 1 and 3 turns, and that chance is random in every case except for 1. So if you have to sleep for at least 1 turn, so you will be out of condition for at least 1 turn, and then from there you have a 1 in 3 chance of waking up after 1 turn of sleep, 1 in 3 chance of waking up after 2 turns of sleep, and 1 in 3 chance of waking up after 3 turns of sleep. Keep in mind these probabilities change as you go through. So if I've slept for 2 turns already, I know that I have a 50% chance of waking up on the 3rd turn and a 50% chance of sleeping for the 3rd turn. Heal Bell was removed? Oh, goodbye, Bronzong. So, this is a great question that Frosty Blade just asked. Sleep used to be broken in so many ways. They have fixed it a little bit. It's still broken. The way that sleep used to work, stay with me, if you slept for 2 turns and switched out, that counter was reset. So you'd have to sleep for, and you would have a set sleep turns on each Pokemon. You don't need to know all this actually, but like basically switching, if you slept for a turn and then switched out, that turn wasn't counted. You had to stay on the field. That was broken. They fixed it. Now if my Pokemon sleeps for 1 turn, switches out, and comes back in, I have already taken 1 turn of sleep. So now I have a 1 in 3 chance to wake up this turn. You cannot sleep for more than 3 turns. The exception to the sleep for 1 to 3 turns rule is if you use rest. This is important. If you use rest, you will always sleep for 2 turns, and then you wake up. So that's the exception to the sleep rule. There's a lot of exceptions in Pokemon. Oh, actually, okay, we've already talked about this, but Eston asks a really good question. Pokemon, the way that it works, if you would do decimal damage, is it truncates. So if a move would do like 9.999999 damage, like for example, Sandstorm does 1/16th damage per turn, and let's say you had that like 1/16 equals 9.8 or whatever, 9.9 repeating. That's 9 damage. Pokemon truncates the decimal, so 9 point anything is just 9. 8 point anything is just 8. So that's important to know, just in general for you to know.
Okay.
Sorry, this is taking a while. Freeze. Let's talk about the most broken status. Freeze is the most broken status, and I hate it.
Okay. I'm gonna write down number 4. Is it status?
And it should be removed from the game, in my opinion, or it should be that it's stupid. They should weaken it in some ways. Freeze. Freeze is it's the one status that you cannot inflict with a move. Like there's no like freeze beam or whatever. Freeze is so broken. If you get frozen, which can only happen from the secondary effect of a move, you have a 1 in 5 chance every attack you use to thaw out. Otherwise, you're just unable to move indefinitely. You can also force a thaw by being hit with any fire type attack or the move Scald. You can also thaw yourself by using certain moves from behind freeze or from frozen, such as Scald. However, other than that, you could be frozen indefinitely. There have been games where I've been frozen for 9 or 10 turns. And unlike singles, there's no sleep clause in VGC, so you can put all your opponent's Pokemon to sleep. In fact, that has happened to most VGC players at some point. Well, maybe not most, but it's happened to many VGC players.
Wait, so then can I just keep freezing or statusing them? Yeah, right?
Fire types can be frozen, which is unfortunate, and I hate it. Um, Confusion. Confusion's the last one. So confusion can be cured by switching out. Every time you are confused, or every turn that you remain confused, you have a 1 in 3 chance, used to be 50%, but you have a 1 in 3 chance to fail to attack and instead to damage yourself. Confusion's very frustrating. It did get better. Because it used to be 50%, which is broken. They also weaken swagger. I actually am not sure the probability of snapping out of confusion. Does anyone know it? There's a couple other weird conditions like attract, which is a 50% chance to not attack, but only works on Pokemon of the opposite gender. And there's a couple other ones that I don't really feel like we need to talk about, like curse, which are special. But yeah, that's for the most part. Something that most singles players do not know, and maybe most of you do not know. This is very important. So, guys, did you know that if you use a spread move like Rock Slide or Earthquake, it's not its actual base power. The base power is actually multiplied by 3 over 4. So that means that Earthquake, which is a 100 base power move, is actually only 75 base power in doubles. Did you all know this?
Interesting. I did not know that.
So, for example, a move like Superpower is actually... So let's talk about...
I gotta write this down.
Earthquake.
Number 5. Spread damage reduction.
Is normally in singles. Earthquake is a 100 base power move. In singles, that's a 150 effective base power move because Landorus is ground type. Earthquake is ground type. Here's a little review. Landorus gets the stab boost, STAB, same type attack bonus. And that means that Earthquake is actually 150 base power. However, in doubles, it's not the same. So in doubles, Earthquake is actually only a 75 base power attack if it's targeting multiple Pokemon. Whereas Superpower is a 120 base power move. Which that means that, well, actually I can't do this in my head, so let's pull up the calculator. Because so that's, because 80 times 1.5 is 120, so Earthquake in doubles is only 112 base power move compared to Superpower's 120 power move. So Landorus is actually better off if it wants to KO something using Superpower, assuming they're both neutral, in doubles. That's very, very important. Dragon Darts is the exception to this. Dragon Darts works as 250 base power moves rather than a spread 100 base power move. There's exceptions to this. So, if a Pokemon protects, let's say I use Rock Slide. One of my opponent's Pokemon protects, the other one gets hit by it. Spread damage reduction does apply. Even though I only hit one Pokemon with it, it doesn't matter. Spread damage reduction still applies because I've targeted 2 Pokemon. However, if I knocked out the other partner and Rock Slide only had one target, then in that case, Rock Slide would actually be at its full 75 base power rather than the reduction. So there is a way to get around this in doubles. So that's very important. So there are times where this reduction goes away. It's at the time of targeting. The other thing is that, let's say I knocked out, let's say same scenario. Instead of Rock Slide, I use Earthquake, and I've knocked out one of my opponent's Pokemon. Still gets the spread damage reduction because it targets my partner. So Earthquake is and Surf and not Muddy Water. Earthquake, Surf, Brutal Swing, moves that hit the whole field, including your partner. Those moves only do not get the reduction if you've knocked out both your partner and one of the opponent's Pokemon.
What?
Immunities work the same way as Protect. It's all about targeting. So those moves only do not get the reduction if moves that hit the whole field, including your partner. Those moves only reduction because it targets my partner. So Earthquake is and Surf and not Muddy Water. Earthquake, Surf, Brutal Swing, moves that hit the whole field, including your partner. Those moves only do not get the reduction if you've knocked out both your partner and one of the opponent's Pokemon. Immunity the same way as protect. It's all about targeting. So, yeah, that's very important to know in terms of calculating damage.
Okay, so then what I'm getting out of it is that even if it's your own Pokemon, it's still a 75% power. If that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, if your partner and their partner are both KO'd, then it's full damage. Misses again do not count. It's all about the targeting. So I hope that was valuable because that's very important for knowing about double battles.
Okay, number 6. Abilities.
If it misses, yeah, like I said, still gets the reduction. It's only if the Pokemon is knocked out. There's no exceptions. Phantom Force, same thing. It's only about
target.
It's only about the reduction. So let's talk about abilities. Each Pokemon has one ability at a time. That's set at birth, except you can change it with the ability capsule, kind of. And they normally have all Pokemon have between 1 and 3 abilities. These are crucial. This is part of your homework, so pay attention. They do lots of things. They can affect stats like Intimidate and Swift Swim.
Pay attention, chat. Pay attention.
They can provide, so pay attention. They do lots of things. They can affect the stats like Intimidate and Swift Swim. They can provide defensive boosts like Solid Rock and Ice Scales. They can provide offensive boosts like Adaptability, Tinted Lens. They can activate field conditions, which we'll talk about later, Psychic Surge, Sandstream, etc., and they can do a ton of things. Abilities are crucial, so this is part of your homework, so yeah, this is very important. Items.
Oh.
Each Pokemon...
Number 7. Items.
Can hold one item. Some items do not work if they're held, like potions or revives. Like a lot of people who have played like just through the game, but have not played Pokemon competitively or VGC or singles, whatever. Those people are like, oh, like I don't understand. Pokemon's so easy. Why wouldn't you just hold revives or use revives? Those aren't allowed. Some like basically the terminology I think it is that man-made items Pokemon cannot hold. Don't ask me why weakness policy is not man-made. I do not know. But yeah, there's hundreds of items. However, there might actually be thousands. Don't know. Anyway, there's normally only, I would say, about 30. There may even be less that are like majority. Like, of course, there are certain like exceptions to that. Like there are certain items like Keyberry, for example, which is not super common, but you should know what it does. For example, stuff like that. But that's not what I wanted. Mostly it's like 20 to 30, I would say, are actually used. Some of the more common items that you should know about are the choice items, which are Choice Band, Choice Scarf, and Choice Specs, which apply a 1.5 times boost to a Pokemon's stats, either a speed, special attack, or attack, but at the cost that the first item you use once you enter the field, you have to use until you switch out or faint. Well, you have to use it until you switch out, basically. Yeah. Other common things are berries, Citrus Berry, and then Figgy, Ayapapa, Wiki, Aguav, and Mago berries. Those are all heal health at different thresholds of HP. Type-producing berries like Occa Berry, Pasho Berry, and Rindo Berry. And offensive items like Life Orb, Weakness Policy, but there's a couple more that I haven't mentioned. Yeah, so items are important. We'll talk more about items in a future lesson. Whatever, Wolf. Natures. I found this chart by, the only credit I can find is someone named Brain Eater. So Brain Eater, thank you for your chart. If you would like me to credit you in a different way, just let me know. I don't know who you are. But you made a great chart. So, natures. Natures are very essential. These things affect the stats. We actually should have talked about this with the stats, but that's okay. Each nature multiplies one stat by 1.1 times and another by 0.9 times.
Okay, number 8. What is it? Natures.
Now, you might think that lowering your stats is actually bad. However, it's normally good because on most Pokemon, there's a stat you want to be weaker, or at least it doesn't hurt to be weaker. So, Choice Scarf applies a 1.5 times boost to speed. So, for example, if you were running a Trick Room team, you might want your Pokemon to be slower. Using your nature to lower your speed stat is actually really, really good. However, since most Pokemon only use one of their attacking stats, there are mixed attackers. But most Pokemon use either their attack stat or their special attack stat with the most part. Like 90% of Pokemon, somewhere in there, they will only use one of their offensive stats, and so the other one you don't really need. So for a special attacker, for the test you will have to fill out this chart by yourself because it's important to know. You might be asked about like just the important ones. Like you don't need to know like lonely or like I don't know mild. Those are not like super important, but it doesn't hurt. But yeah. So, for a special attacker, lowering your physical attack stat can be good because there are certain moves that take advantage of the physical attack stat, such as Foul Play, and also Confusion. Those calculate based on your attack stat, so it's good to weaken it. There's also, as mentioned by C. Gallinule, there are certain examples like where you want to lower your stats, like on Stack Attacka for Beast Boost, but for the most part, there's certain natures you don't use. There's also a couple natures that just do nothing. They don't raise anything. They don't lower anything. Although I did lose to a serious Groudon at Worlds, for the most part they're not good. I think I think there's very few examples where having a nature that does nothing is optimal. Like almost. I don't even know if it's possible. But yeah. Let's move on. EVs and IVs. So this is just a very general overview. This is probably gonna be what I talk about in the next lesson. But yeah, so EVs, effort values, and IVs, individual values. And I'm not talking about the Pokemon EV. Determine the actual stats of a Pokemon in combination with the base stats. So for those.
Okay, number 9. EVs and IVs.
Those of you who remember earlier when we talked about base stats and actual stats, this is what I was talking about. So IVs are set at birth. They used to be set at birth completely. Now you can train them with hyper training. Hyper training allows you to artificially make any Pokemon stats 31, which only happens at level 100. But yeah, so IVs are a number between 0 and 31. What that means is that at level 100, you will have whatever IV you have at each stat. Each Pokemon has 6 IVs. Whatever IV you have in that stat is how many extra points you have at level 100. So an IV of 16 on the attack stat means 16 more points in the attack stat at level 100. It's roughly halved at level 50. Yeah, so at level 50, for the most part, it correlates to about 15 extra stat points at level 50. So it's important. It's really important. 15 stat points are huge. Like that's nothing, or that's nothing to sneeze at.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, IVs used to be set at birth. You can change them now with bottle caps. It's also relative. It's very easy to breed here. So in this generation, so that's important. EVs are how you influence your Pokemon via training. So all Pokemon have 0 EVs when they are caught or bred. These are influenced based on the training you do. You can do this via the PC, which is easy, or you can do it via training in the wild, which is also easy, just depending on what you want to do and the time you have. We're going to talk more about these in a future lecture. EVs, you have 508 points of values to allocate, and you can get about 65, maybe slightly more if you wanted to. Maybe up to 66? I don't know. You can get a lot. You can get basically influence your stats a large amount using EV training. So keep this in mind. This will be very important for a future lecture. I'd recommend you do some research on your own because it's slightly complicated. So yeah, this is a good thing to ask about in the Discord if you do not know about EVs and IVs. This is just a very quick overview. Can you lower IVs with bottle caps? No, you cannot. You should be able to, in my opinion, but you cannot, and that makes Trick Room Pokemon much harder this generation to get. Field effects. Field effects are things that affect the whole board, or at least half of the board.
Okay, so in terms of EVs and IVs, I already know what they are and how they work. So I'm not going to talk about it too much. Again, and he says it. If you want to know more about it, you kind of just have to look up it yourself. And then the next point I'm going to make, number 10, field effects.
sometimes. These I just wanted to give a quick overview of these. There are more common ones like Trick Room, which reverse the speed order of Pokemon, so the faster Pokemon move last and the slower Pokemon move first. Tailwind, which double your size speed stats for 4 turns, including the turn it's set. Terrains, which, guys, I learned about this. You have to know. Listen, I'm gonna give you a second. If you tabbed out, pay attention right now. This is very important. I'm gonna give you like 20 seconds because it's actually really important. Nobody talked about this. Nobody knows. I gotta tell you. Did you know they've changed terrains and they are no longer 1.5 times multipliers? They're now 1.3. They're nerfed. So when you're doing damage, and I don't know if damage calculators are wrong. I am sure that Showdown is wrong. 100% sure. Nobody knew. Nobody told anybody. Terrains are nerfed. Welcome to VGC 2020. I'll give you a second to process because that's a big deal.
Okay, I'll write that down. .3 times terrains.
So terrains have different effects. They multiply, except for Misty Terrain, they multiply one type by 1.5. Sorry. Sorry. 1.3 times damage. Oh my god, I almost said. Whew. Oh. Oh my god. Pikachu is guys, you can't see what next to the green screen. Pikachu's just standing there menacingly. He almost shocked me. He's making me do this. He made me wear the suit. Okay, let's move on. Terrains multiply one type by 1.3. 1.3 times damage. Okay. Yeah, they multiply one type by 1.3 times damage with the exception of Pikachu. And by Pikachu, I mean Misty Terrain. I will give you one guess for which type each of the terrains multiply. Grassy Terrain multiplies grassy type attacks. Psychic Terrain multiplies psychic type attacks. And Electric Terrain multiplies Pyukumuku type attacks. Moving on. Reflect, Light Screen, Aurora Veil. You can do this. Reflect, Light Screen, and Aurora Veil. Here's the thing you need to know. Hey, singles players, guess what? These things aren't as broken in doubles. Well, maybe they're more broken. In singles, these things multiply. They cause a reduction of 2 times, okay? Which is broken. It's broken, okay, in singles. In doubles, similarly to spread effects, they don't reduce as much. So Reflect and Light Screen they don't have damage anymore. I think it's 1.5 times. Oh, I'm so sorry. Wait, talking about terrains. Grassy Terrain heals all terrains only affect Pokemon that touch the ground.
Okay, he's explaining all the terrains now. You went too far ahead.
So not flying types, not Pokemon with Levitate, and not Pokemon that were affected by Telekinesis, which was removed from the game, but I always wanted to use it, but I never found an opportunity to, so I'm really sad. So they only affect Pokemon that touch the ground. So you can fake out Hawlucha, you can fake out Cresselia. Rest in peace, Cresselia, you will be missed. Grassy Terrain halves damage of Earthquake, halves damage of Magnitude. Do not use Magnitude. Does not have other ground type moves, with the exception I think there's one more, but maybe not. And Air Balloon, thank you, Air Balloon also. So Grassy Terrain heals all Pokemon by leftovers amount, which is 6% at the end of the turn. And also raises grass type attacks by 1.5. 1.3 times, 1.3 times, 1.3 times, 1.3 times. Please. Bulldoze? Oh, Bulldoze. Misty Terrain protects all Pokemon that touch the ground from status. And also protect all Pokemon that touch the ground from status, so you can't burn, poison, freeze, confuse, paralyze, anything. And it also halves all damage from dragon type attacks by 1/2. Psychic Terrain prevents all priority moves from being used on Pokemon that touch the ground, and also provides a boost to Psychic type attacks. And Electric Terrain prevents all Pokemon that touch the ground from being falling asleep, including rest. Though I've done that twice in singles battles. Can you infatuate through Misty Terrain? I believe you can, but I'm not positive, but I think you can. Electric, multiply by Electric by 1.5, no sleep. Yeah. Reflect, Light Screen, Aurora Veil. I already talked about Reflect and Light Screen, and Aurora Veil is the same. So Reflect and Light Screen are both physical and special. Reflect has physical attacks by, I think, 1.5. Light Screen by 1.5 as well. Aurora Veil is both physical and special, so it's way better than Reflect and Light Screen. However, it can only be set during Hail. So that's the weakness of Aurora Veil.
I didn't know that.
You cannot stack Aurora Veil and Reflect. So you cannot use Reflect and Aurora Veil and have it be 2 multipliers. They work on the same. They work on the same like counter. So if you have Reflect and Aurora Veil up, it only counts one of them. Some less common ones are Magic Room, which removes all held items. That was kind of good last year to stop Xerneas for 5 turns. Magic Room and Wonder Room work like Trick Room. You can Trick Room, by the way. Trick Room, Magic Room, and Wonder Room, you can reverse. So if your opponent sets Trick Room, if you have a Trick Room Pokemon in your team and you use Trick Room, it will return the Twisted Dimensions to normal. So that's important. So yeah, Magic Room removes all held items. Wonder Room I wish was good. It's just not. It switches defense and special defense. And Gravity, which increases accuracy and makes all Pokemon land on the ground. And prevents certain moves like High Jump Kick. No, I think I was tested, and I think that unlike the spread damage multiplier, I don't think that Reflect and Light Screen can ever have single target damage multiplier. Yo, Panda Global, thank you very much for 5 gifted subs. I really appreciate that, guys. Welcome to the Academy. Please sit down. Cool. This is almost the last thing, so we're almost done, guys. The very last thing I want to talk about is interpreting exports. I'm just going to walk you through an export here. This is my Dracovish export from Showdown, because I know that not everyone can read these, so I want to just make sure that we all are literate in this chat. So, let's talk about this export. So the first thing you see is it's Plakia. We're going to line by line. Plakia, parentheses Dracovish, and parentheses at Choice Band. What this means is its nickname is Plakia, parentheses the actual species of Pokemon with its Dracovish, and the at means the item. So this is nickname Plakia at the Pokemon holding the Choice Band. This is how you read this. Ability, Strong Jaw, straightforward. Level 50. EVs, this is how I've invested in Mr. Fish. 4 HP, 252 attack, and 252 speed. Adamant Nature, IVs, 0 special attack, and then the 4 moves. Nothing too crazy here, but I know some people don't understand what the ats and the Plakia means, so yeah. Gender, I don't have it in Showdown. If I had it in Showdown, it would...
Okay, so for the IVs, I'm assuming it's max IVs for everything except special attack.
say it, I believe.
So that's what's only showing 0 special attack.
Let me just see. I will check for that for you. If I put shiny in, it would say shiny. Oh, Dracovish doesn't have a gender, but if a Pokemon had a gender, Duraludon, let's say Duraludon's female, then it would say Duraludon parentheses F. 0 special attack. It's not actually 0 special attack. I just wanted to show you guys what it would look like. Yeah. Also, thank you for 2,000 viewers. I think this is the most I've ever had without being hosted by somebody. IVs are all 31 unless specified, and happiness, if it says happiness, then it will say happiness. If you have happiness set. Mr. Fish is genderless, yeah. Here's your homework. We're almost done, guys.
Oh, homework. Okay. Homework time.
Here's your homework. So, this screenshot is taken from VGC Stats. I seriously recommend pause, open up Twitter, follow VGC Stats, okay? It's an incredible resource. Zach runs it. He's a great guy. He's actually helping out with Pokemon Academy here, so I super recommend.
Maybe I should. What is it? VGC Stats.
Recommend you use it. He's also holding online tournaments with prizes at the moment, but honestly, the prize is just the experience, in my opinion. So go follow him. Yeah, he's running tournaments. He's done so much good for the community. He runs a resource called VGC Stats. I'm actually gonna link VGCstats.com just so you guys. So what Zach does is he compiles usage stats, and this is still sorry. I'll move my head. Can't see. He compiles resources. He compiles usage stats that get for all the Pokemon that earn points throughout the season, which is an incredible resource, and should not be understated. Yeah, can we get an exclamation point stats or exclamation point VGC stats? We're going to talk about weather next lecture. So this is the usage stats from VGC Stats. Again, I recommend you.
Oh wait, what's homework? Memorize the abilities of the Pokemon in this image from the first 3 Galar weekly tournament. What? Okay, so it's just this chart, right? Oh, but then from this time, yeah. Not sure if I should remember each Pokemon's abilities and all the abilities that I can have. Okay. Just write down memorize. Okay. Memorize abilities, and then I go to Twitter or X and look for this image. Okay. First 3 Galar weekly. And also memorize type chart.
You follow him, I recommend you participate in the tournaments. Can we also get exclamation point Reddit for r/VGC? I think that's also useful. That's another very useful website. So the website's not updated because Zach runs this website specifically for live events, and we haven't started VGC 20 events yet. So there's no points that have been earned. So in January, the website will start being updated regularly. So yeah. So that's a great resource. I recommend you check it out. The other thing is that also I recommend you guys play in these tournaments. Somebody won not this past week, but the one before, where they had never played in a tournament before ever. It was their first tournament, and they used Galarian Weezing, and they won the tournament. That was Lucas from, I believe, Belgium. So I seriously recommend you check them out. I recommend you play in these tournaments because they're super fun. They're on Saturdays, and Zach is a great guy, and he's doing really good work for the community. So I recommend that you check this out. Your homework for this week is to memorize the type chart. I may be doing pop quiz next week. I wanted to put together thinking. I wanted to put together like a homework sheet. I'm gonna try it for next week, but again, I was so busy this week with my birthday, and I was out of town until last night. So and I had work today, obviously. So yeah. So I was very busy, so I didn't have time to put together the homework sheet. Even this, I was kind of
Is the homework sheet down here?
That's the homework. Thank you all, and then.
Yeah. Okay. Where's the homework sheet? Is it down here? Okay, homework sheet. I guess not. Okay, well, I think that's it for the video. I'm probably gonna end the stream here. Okay, for the homework, I guess I'll try stream it. That way I can look back and see how I do. I can't wait to actually try to play competitive Pokemon. But yeah, I'm gonna stream here. I hope y'all enjoyed the stream. And hopefully I'll see you next time. See ya.